In this week's episode of Short Final, Richard builds up a sweat in the flight simulator while spending a day with the Silver Falcons. Jesse finds out what it's like on final approach to OR Tambo International Airport and why Fatima Jakut is no ordinary commercial airline pilot. And Tiana visits Donald Williamson's factory to find out what it takes to design and build your very own aeroplane. Tiana, who is a full-time flying instructor at the Cape Town Flying Club, spends a day with Donald in his factory to find out more about the AX Sport.
I'm here in Donald Williamson's factory. As you can see, we've got one wing of the AX Sport just here in front of us, and I'm going to go and ask him what it's like to build your own aircraft. How do you go from actually drawing an ideal aircraft to putting it into production to making what we've got here in front of us?
Passion. I wanted to design, build and fly my own aircraft.
Yes.
I didn't have the money for the latest airplanes, they're so expensive. But I wanted to build and go into a production to produce aerobatic aircraft.
Designing and building a plane from scratch takes a lot of time, dedication, perseverance, as well as technical knowledge and skill.
So how much of it did Andrew Parsons actually do in terms of building and designing the aircraft?
I wanted it to look pretty, he wanted it to fly.
Okay.
So we came to a compromise. No, he did all the homework and everything, and he's an aeronautical guy. He knows how to make it fly,
yes.
And I know how to build it.
Andrew Parsons was the aeronautical engineer behind the AX Sport, making sure Donald's designs would actually fly.
What is the process of taking Donald's designs that he made on paper and actually making it into an aircraft?
Well, it's a very iterative, designing aircraft, very iterative process. So you basically run through a number of steps. So you start off with defining, do you want a low wing or high wing? In this case, Donald wanted good aerobatic performance. So invariably you end up with something that starting off looks like all the other aerobatic aircraft. From that point, we iterated, I think got up to about 14 iterations just to finalize a sketch of what the aircraft looked like. And at that point you can come up with a weight and balance estimate for the aircraft to see if it'll be stable.
Yes.
And then start some aerodynamic design. And on the aerodynamic design we followed the FAR 23 regulations for at least aircraft loading.
Yes.
And that allowed us then to determine what the loads on the aircraft would be, and from the loads you can work out what the actual structural, let's say, size of the various materials has to be.
Like most high-performance equipment these days, the AX Sport is made almost entirely of carbon fiber, reducing weight and increasing performance.
The AX Sport is an all-carbon aircraft, so it's basically a sandwich cord carbon. So if you take a look, what is carbon? Carbon's an awesome fiber. It's stronger, stiffer and lighter than glass fiber.
It looks like a meshed fabric.
Yes, and it's a woven fabric. So by itself, carbon is very floppy.
Okay.
But in terms of an aircraft structure, you'd basically bond it to a nice foam core.
Yes.
So you'd end up with a carbon layer on each side of a foam core. And the foam core itself is quite brittle, so you can break it.
Okay.
But sandwiched together, you end up with a sandwich panel. And that's again, basically one layer of carbon with a little bit of foam in it.
Yes.
And you end up with a very lightweight, very, very stiff structure.
Definitely can't break this.
Donald hangars and flies the AX Sport at Morningstar Airfield, which is on the N7 just outside Cape Town.
I noticed that at the front the cockpit is very limited. At the back you've got a glass cockpit. How does it work?
Okay, this is most airplanes of today are starting to come out with glass cockpits, very light, lots of different pages on it. You can set up your own pages, like there, that's my test flight page.
Okay,
That's
so you've got the temperatures and pressures.
everything you want.
What about the control stick? How does it feel compared to a traditional aircraft?
Very, very light. As you can see, even in the wind, the
just
stick
moves on its own.
the stick will move around. You can move it with a piece of cotton. Everything's bearings.
And what have I got here? Is this the ballistic parachute at the back?
Yes, the ballistic parachute is operated from here. If I had to pull the lever here, a rocket sends it out, It takes roughly about 1.5 seconds to full deployment, and it'll bring the passenger and the pilot and the aircraft down to ground.
The AX Sport is still in its certification stage, where the CAA requires 40 hours to have been flown until passengers are allowed to be taken up. But we mounted several GoPros on board to get an idea of how this aircraft performs. Thank you for watching this episode of Short Final. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for behind the scenes and upcoming episodes.